Boom.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. This is fun because this is the first show that we've done in absolutely forever that's live.
2 years, I think.
It's been a long time because we sequestered away. We said, lock us into
it was 1 year. It was 1 year. It was
lock us underground. And Dave said, what was the problem with that? Let's just stay underground. And Sean and I wanted to climb out of the missile bunker. And so we're going back to recording live Fridays at 2 Central, most Fridays at 2 Central at sterlingandstone.net/SSP. But we have an inaugural audience here today. So welcome back, live viewers. Thank you. Thank you.
We need noisemakers.
And then the second thing that's super awesome is that we have our first guest in quite some time. And he's a really, really cool guest. So I'd like to welcome to the show, Chris Plough.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So, Chris, what's the best way to describe you? Because I think I described you to somebody the other day as like, I said he's kind of half Zen guy and half crazy adventure guy.
Spiritual badass.
Well, I like that.
I think I might have said Zen badass, actually. So it's very similar.
Well, what's interesting is this is a rare guest where I would get so much more if we were actually in person. Chris really does have one of these, like his energy is just great. Like you're around him and I'm automatically calmer. So the person I mean, Johnny, you know this.
Chris is basically, if you took a bunch of weed and made him into a man shape. He's calming Sean down.
Hold on. Am I legal in most states or do I have to actually stay in only Colorado and a few others?
I don't know. Do you have a strong THC component or are you mostly CBD?
You can lick me and find out.
There you go. Wow. Oh, there's that coming together again. Dave, do you want to say something inappropriate?
Hitler?
Oh, look, it was. All right, he went right for the throat. All right, so Sean, you were saying though about Chris.
Wait, there go our sponsors.
Well, so our friend Jonathan Fields has very calming energy in the same way.
Like me.
Oh, just like you, except without always having to shit every 5 minutes.
Or write about it.
It's every 10 minutes.
So
art imitates life.
The difference is if I had to go into a room full of ninjas, I don't think I would take Jonathan with me, but I would totally take Chris. Like I think he'd last in a ninja fight while also calming me down. And that's a rare.
It'd be one of those time slowing down sequences where he's got all sorts of time to like play a game of chess, read a book.
I think he probably can slow time down. Chris, yeah. Can you slow time?
Wow. Not that I'm aware of, but I'm working on that power. I'm going to say this, though. I hate writing bios, and you're absolutely writing my next bio. Whatever it is, I love this.
You have my word.
He was talking to me.
So we decided.
You know how to slow time, but it's totally different.
It's different. It's like it's the opposite of time flies, sort of a thing. Here's Dave slowing time.
I got that power from Target.
Yeah, if I want to make time just totally stand still, I give Dave a new project.
So the reason that we're having Chris on the show is it's our show, so we can do whatever we want. It's one reason.
The reason was because Chris is awesome.
That is one of the reasons. Another reason is that we are going to be publishing a book of Chris's soon, and there's sort of background for that. But that's it's because he's got this really cool mission, and we want to talk about that, and has lots of really good stories. And so this being the Story Studio podcast, and the directive being let's talk to cool people with cool stories, Chris seemed like an ideal guest for our first live show.
Well, it's like, okay, if we ask Dave, so Dave, what have you done in the last couple of weeks? Dave, what's the most interesting thing you've done in the last month?
I went to the ball field with my son, and there's like nobody there, like nobody, and it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Did he make finger guns?
You actually know what the middle of nowhere is. I think
there's woods all around and hunting rifles going off pretty much nonstop. So
like downtown.
Yes. So we get out, and I had hurt my arm, so I couldn't pitch to him that day. So he's like, I'm just gonna leave the bat in the car. I said, no, bring the bat. He's like, why do you want to bring the bat? I said, because somebody might come. And he's like, well, what do you mean by somebody might come? I said, somebody might come and Daddy might need to hurt them. And he's like, what?
Wow, you live in a whole other world.
So where's the most interesting place you've been in the last few weeks? And was it also the middle of nowhere?
To me?
Yes.
Yeah, you.
Okay.
Come on, Michael.
So I was so lost. Yeah, exactly. Michael. For those of you who don't know, you can also call me Michael or any other name.
It's a thing.
He's transcended the need for a name.
Can I call you Al?
Yeah, you can absolutely call me Al. That's an honor. I just got back. I'm jet lagged, so please excuse me. I just got back from taking a group of people through Bhutan, which is this little country that's near, kind of on the border of India and Nepal, up in the Himalayas.
So like the target of the area?
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's completely touristy, you know, overdone, everything else. They only let a few people in each year.
How many Starbucks did you go to while there?
Strangely, zero. Can you imagine?
Weird.
Zero. Yeah. Although I am starting a new franchise there. They don't like it very much, but I figured, hey, I'm American, might as well. No, it's so this will maybe like fit into it all. Beyond like having an adventure, driving motorcycles across this country, around mountains where you have like 500 to 1,000 foot drop offs on this side and huge cliffs on this side. I got a chance to sit down with my friends and one of the highest Buddhist masters in the country and get schooled. And what I mean schooled, I mean schooled. So that's a little taste.
Wow, I don't want to play something cool with Chris in the room.
No.
Gee, makes my story a little boring now.
Well, I think that was the point.
But then immediately thereafter, just for some context and everything else, I ended up in Bangkok and through a series of events, saw some shows where things fly out of orifices and was completely aghast. So
you can get that where I live too.
Yeah. So those are the ranges in life, right? You can see a little bit of everything and anything.
So what is the number one thing that the Buddhist master taught you?
Well, here's what I learned, which is very different. So he sat down and talked with us and everything else and gave us 45 minutes of his time. And then he's like, he opened it up to questions. He's like, okay, do you have a question to ask? And I was like, okay, question. What can I say? What can I say? And a question would pop into my head and I'd be like, I can ask this. And I'm like, oh, you're just trying to sound smart. You really don't care like about that. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's not a really good thing to do in front of a Buddhist master. Let's try to sound smart. Then I think of another question and I would know the answer. Like I would know the answer to it. And I did that 3 or 4 times, realized I had the knowing inside of me, which is beautiful because Buddhism is all about you are empowered and you are responsible. You're not, it's not the guru who is like the master of what you're capable of. And so then I just sat down and I was quiet and allowed everybody else to ask questions and I learned a hell of a lot more. So what I learned from my time with the Buddhist master is shut up, listen, be present, and don't try to be a smart ass or to prove that you're the best kid in the class.
I would feel very intimidated if a Buddhist master said, do you have a question? Because I would feel like I needed to pose it in the form of a riddle, deliver it while riding a goat. Like the question, the fact that you have a question is really the question. Like I'd expect all sorts of layers. It is interesting what you said, though, because that's kind of something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, too, is sometimes I'll realize I'm going to say something just to say it. And it doesn't, nothing that comes back to me is going to increase my knowledge or anything. It's just like, wow, I felt some weird desire to say that. And it's like what you said about, I would just be kind of showing off.
Well, but let's take that. And there's actually a couple really interesting layers in that, right? Because I've had a chance to go through this. So like, okay, I've got the desire to say something. And maybe below that is, all right, my ego wants to show off a little bit, right? But maybe even below that is, if you can get past that, maybe the question isn't of value to you, but maybe it's for the value of somebody else around you, right? So in an egoless way, can you ask the same question and somebody else benefits because maybe it's a thought that they needed within their head, or maybe it's that little spark and everything else. And so at first I was like, okay, like just shut up and be present. And then I began thinking, well, maybe this isn't for me or about me. And maybe something that I ask has a profound effect upon somebody else. So there are layers upon layers upon layers, and you never get to the bottom. It's like, exploring like the inner space is as vast as the outer space.
See, now that's interesting because I can imagine a layer below that wherein you ask a question that would benefit other people, but really you're doing it subconsciously to justify an ego decision where I will look smart, and by the way, I'm helping other people, so it's okay.
And then below that, maybe there is this collective unconscious, right, that we are tapped into sometimes, and it's just giving you a little ping to go, yo, do your thing. It's necessary right now.
Dave, do you want to weigh in on the collective unconscious and do your ayahuasca Joe again, or?
No, not this time.
It's been a long time.
It's a little rusty.
So I have a question. So all of the things that you just said that you learned are things that I would have assumed that you know anyway, because that's the kind of person that you strike me as. So are these things that were like confirmations for you, where you knew them but you kind of had to be reminded, and that going into this quiet space just is kind of like resets you a little bit?
My belief. So I think there's different levels of knowing, right? So like you can kind of know something in your head. You can kind of like know it within a deeper, more emotional way. You can know it within your body, viscerally. And so I think that as we go through these lessons, like I've learned this lesson many times, but each time I learn it, it gets lower and lower and lower. And if we think about like the levels of consciousness, I think that programming goes from being something that we're consciously doing and we have to like have a conscious reaction to becoming more and more unconscious patterns. So it just becomes the default. And strangely, this is maybe an odd tangent, that's how I've begun to think about enlightenment, right? We have this practice of meditation, and in meditation, you find the ability to sit with something going on in your body, your mind, feelings, emotions, sensations, etc. And you force yourself through a bit of will to not react to them or to accept them and anything else. But soon that becomes an unconscious pattern that just automatically begins to happen. Maybe there's a small almost reaction time and then it kicks in. And then eventually it just becomes pure, like that is the default response within the unconscious, within the body, etc. And there is no need to have any conscious or energy put towards that shift. And it becomes how you are. And I think that maybe enlightenment is like that. All of these things that we do and we try to adhere to consciously become this unconscious level where it is just how we are in our being.
Have we ever talked about the surrender experiment?
No, but I can say this, and I don't know if this is right for this crowd or not, but fuck it. So fuck that.
I think it's right. I think you're on.
Yeah. I was recommended that book many, many times by people I cared about and who cared about me, and eventually I did it. But the way that I did it was, and I don't know why I chose this, I chose to keep a psilocybin experience journey going for 12 hours and listen to the book in order to take that in as deeply as I could.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
Let's talk all about this. Okay. So yeah, okay. I'm actually with you here. Like that was a book that was recommended to me. I think that the gap between the first recommendation and when I read it late last year was about 5 years.
All right. Hold on. I got to back up a second because we're talking in insider language at this point, and I realize we haven't even really introduced Chris. And you're talking about the surrender experiment in terms of like, can you give some context? Like what is the surrender experiment? Why did you come to it? Why are you asking Chris about it?
Okay, that's a really good idea. And I was actually thinking that while he was telling his story a few minutes ago, that we should take a step back. And Chris, you've got a great story, and I will.
Yeah, I kind of don't know where to begin because I can talk about Adventure X, but I don't even, knowing you a little bit more at this point, I feel like that doesn't even do justice. That's like one thing.
It doesn't. It's that story. And Johnny, you were there. Like I'd seen shades of the story before because I met Chris in Park City in September of last year. And it was pretty immediate. I'm like, I really like this guy. And I guess that's it. We just saw each other a few days in September, but then Chris came to the summit, mostly just because, and I was so happy that like, oh my God, you're here. And we did that little, that
was before the summit was the little story solution event, but it was just kind of closed door. Like we just invited friends and, ways to see your life as if you were the protagonist of your story, and just to help kind of clarify the vision, like why you're here, what's your purpose and meaning. And that's when I think the story that you're talking about, Sean.
Yeah, and then I've had a fourth time with Chris, which was we did the thing at Kern County Correctional.
Yeah,
a couple of months last month, and that was really amazing. But the thing that Johnny's talking about, the thing that I was talking about, was that this little 2-day event, and we all had to tell our story and like pivotal moments in our story. Because
to tell 3 stories and what's the common element and that sort of thing. It's actually very similar to the story ladder that we did with who was that?
Lisa Bloom.
Yeah, on I don't know how long ago. It might even have been Stories self-publishing podcast. But it's like you start to notice what the 3 things that are in common between those stories, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's something that's core to this person. So yes.
Yeah, and there's this moment where you knew that Chris has told this story many times before, and he's gauged the reaction from the people who are getting the story. And so there's a moment in the story where he has to stop, and he lets us know that I'm okay. I mean, Chris is okay. I was fine. He's like, I'm going to tell you something, and you need to know that I'm okay. And then he tells this really devastating part of the story. But the way that he was inclusive in the telling of it, and he knew that I'm about to pass some of my trauma forward, and I don't want you to absorb it. And he was a real gentleman about telling the story. And so I don't know if you want to tell that particular story. I think it's a dramatic story, and I think it's, if you want to, absolutely. But
yeah, if you're willing, Chris, I would encourage you to tell the story, because I think it's the core of the reason that we want to do a book with you.
Yeah, glad to. And I think there's a lot of stories that run around in my head. Here's the one that comes up now. And again, like Johnny said, I share this willingly, know that I'm completely okay. I actually gave a talk about this earlier this year for the first time publicly. So
yeah, where's that link? I'm still waiting.
I know. So it should actually be released here soon, finally.
I would very, very much like to see that.
Thank you. It's in audio form, so you can hear it instead of see it. But yes,
I would very much like to hear it.
Yeah, I guess it's easier just to jump straight in. So I had a really rough and interesting childhood, and not the roughest, and there's no reason to compare or anything else. But when I was 16, I drove my little red truck out to the middle of the desert, and I slid over to the passenger side of the truck, listened to an Aerosmith CD a bunch of times because it was something that resonated with me. And I picked up a shotgun, and I put that shotgun in my mouth, and I remember the taste. It's a lot like pennies. And I put my finger on the trigger, and my thumb actually, like there, and on the trigger. And I expected that was going to be the end of it. And for whatever reason, I couldn't pull the trigger. I could not in my life. And for a long time, I just thought I was weak. Thought I wasn't even strong enough to do that, right? That's the level of self-loathing that I had within me. And I've gone through life and done a lot of very beautiful things. I've done a lot of very difficult things. But that cycle of suicidal thoughts and depression has been with me for most of my life. And it changed for me in finally about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, when I was just turning 40. And I was with a friend at an event, and I finally opened up about some of this because I never talked about it with anybody. I was ashamed and closed off about it. And he shared a little bit about what he had gone through, and it resonated with me and made me feel less alone. And he encouraged me to create a list. And he said, hey, I want to be the first person on this list. And when you're in that place, I need you to call me. I require you to call me. And my integrity was stronger than my desire to stay hidden, I guess, to back away and to isolate as I normally do. And so then from that point, I began traveling around, and I sat down with everybody really close to me, my grandmother, my sister, my deepest friends, and I shared what I've been going through for decades. And some of them kind of knew, some of them had no idea and were blown away. And then I told them about the list, and this gets me every time. Every person demanded to be on my list. They didn't ask to be. They didn't, I didn't ask them. They just demanded to be on my list. by the time I was done, I had like, I don't know, 11, 12 or 13 people on this list.
That's funny because people beg to be off of Dave's list. It's totally the opposite.
Thank you for that.
I thought you needed it.
Yeah, well, and humor is fucking beautiful because we got to diffuse these things, right? They can get deep and dark, and it's not about that. It's about sharing and being open. So thank you.
Oh yeah, laughter even in the darkest moments. That's why my wife loves me right there.
Exactly, right? So I finally, after the end of that, just last year, I took a road trip back through New Mexico, went back to that same spot in the desert. I meditated as the sun rose, and I felt peace with it. And I've never had a peace with it before. And so, since then, I've been open and sharing a lot of things I've gone through, right? And
what was the catalyst that put you onto your journey? Because you've done a lot of journeying, so you've got the actual emotional, mental journeying that you've done, and then you've done a lot of physical, actual explorative journeying.
I have. So this again is we'll put a little disclaimer up. Know that I'm okay in sharing this. I had a really, really one of the darkest points of my life after losing my parents, and I lost my parents very tragically. It was a homicide-suicide, and I bottled that away for a long time. I had a business at the time. It began to crumble because of the economic downturn in 2008, 2009. And I just began to go in this huge cycle of overwork and depression and avoiding friends and family and everything else. And eventually I had this very good friend who I still don't exactly know why to this day. He's like, you know what you need to do? You need a fucking adventure. And I think it's because he just thought I was adventurous, not because he knew what was going on in my life. And he told me about these guys who drive strange vehicles from the UK to Mongolia. It's called the Mongol Rally. The Adventurists, if you want to look it up. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Someday I'll do that. Maybe I'll have enough time, etc. But it was a brain seed, like planted right there. And I found myself 9 months later in an ambulance with two friends driving from the UK to Mongolia. And that was the adventure that it didn't fix everything in my life, but it gave me this space. And in this space, I realized how profoundly unhealthy and unhappy I was. I finally grieved for my parents for the first time and opened that door up. And I just realized that I needed to explore and find out what a fulfilling and rewarding life was. And that was in 2010. So 9 years ago. And since then, it's been a journey to understand what is truly a fulfilling and rewarding life. How do we heal ourselves through all these traumas? Because everybody has trauma. Everybody. It doesn't matter the level. Doesn't matter what you've gone through. Everybody has and holds it. And how can we move past all this stuff? And not only just be healthy, but like bring joy and everything else into our life. So that was the beginning of it. And now I'm here.
All right. So bringing this back to the Surrender Experiment. So the Surrender Experiment is a book that I think people, and this wasn't like a random recommendation. I think every single person who recommended it to me is someone I really respect. I respect like the kind of books they would recommend. And they also, pretty much 100% of them had some insight into me as well. So these were like highly qualified recommendations and I bought the book, to be clear. It was on my Audible queue for years. That and what's the other one? The Untethered Soul. Mm-hmm. So they're both on there. And for some reason, I just could not connect with the product description, which was basically, dude goes out into the woods, meditates, and becomes a billionaire. Like, that's kind of a dismissal of the book itself, but it seemed a little too woo-woo for me. And I didn't connect with it at all. And like sometime, I don't know, there is an elegant beauty to the universe for sure. And it seems like the right things always find me at the right time. Right now, I'm dealing with all this stuff with my dad, which we talked about that a couple of episodes ago, and how hugely, how big an issue cognitive dissonance is. And the book that I ended up picking next in my queue right now for almost the same reasons as the Surrender Experiment, which is, I guess I'll read this, is called Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me. and it's all about cognitive dissonance, and it's just the most amazing book, and it's like preparing me to have this conversation with my father, which is just amazing. And it's the same thing. It's like at whatever reason, I was just clearing out my queue and thinking, man, what do I still have that I haven't listened to? And I listened to the Surrender Experiment, and it was so the right book at the right time and place for my life, where we were closing down the Smarter Artist, and there was, I wanted to feel there was a lot of risk in everything we were doing last year. And again, we've said this a bunch of times, but we published 4 books last year, and we're scaling up to 102 this year. So the amount of preparation and belief in what you're doing and all of that you have to keep digging your hole and just believe that there's gold at the bottom if you keep doing it, it's tremendous. And that book really helped me to believe, because I think it gave me a tool set that I already resonate with. Like, I do believe in just letting things happen and not over planning them and going with my gut. But this guy does it to such a religious level. Like his commitment to, I'm just going to make a deal with the universe is just beyond. And I think it's really stuck with me in the last probably 9 months since I read it, and it has affected my behavior. So what was your feeling about that? And maybe you could do a better job of describing what the book actually is. But you seem like a Surrender Experiment guy.
He was on mushrooms. I don't
know. So to be fair, at the time, so I listened to this now probably 3 years ago. Yeah, none of it was really deeply resonant to me. I was beginning meditating. I'd done it for years, but I'd never really meditated.
And can we talk about also what the difference is between the Surrender Experiment and the Law of Attraction? Because I don't think these are the same things.
No. I don't think so either. Although I don't know if I'm an expert on that, but I will crack it together. So the Surrender Experiment at the shortest version is, dude just wants to meditate and like hide from the world, and that's all he cares about. But these opportunities keep coming, and he realizes that it's, not an opportunity to distraction, but this is what the universe is intending him to do. So he's like, okay, fine, fuck it. I'll stop meditating for a little while. I'll do this. And then he gets back to meditating. Then he does this, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And yeah, eventually he becomes somebody who's had a profound effect upon the world and a billionaire. The problem I had with it in the beginning was twofold. One is the spirituality of it. Funny, because I call myself a spiritual badass. Like that was something that did not resonate. I was very, very intellectually focused, especially at the time, even though that was beginning to open up. And then the second part was surrender. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Surrender. like that's weak. I'm not going to surrender.
Never surrender. Corey Hart said so.
Yes, I'm going to embrace. I'm going to, it wasn't until I think earlier this year that I finally accepted the word surrender. Like, it's okay. It's not a weakness, and it's not giving in. It's just an allowing. Like, it's allowing.
It's detachment. It's putting your intentions out into the world without like, I am rigidly going to control how they occur or don't occur.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the absolute core of this is, look, you can have intentions in life, and you can have desires, and you can have all these other things. Yeah, great. Fucking awesome. But we often are really, really specific about how we want them to show up in our life and how we want to create them, etc. So like, an example of that might be finding a life partner. But man, I tell you, if they don't fit this exact measurement, they don't have this exact hair color and hair length, and their eyes aren't this color, and they don't make this type of joke, then I'm not going to accept them, right? And so surrendering is just going, yeah, here's the things that are truly important to me. Have somebody who is loving, caring, funny, intelligent, hot, like whatever that is to you, and allowing that to come in the form it does.
It is me. All of those things are me.
Steve?
Hi,
I think you're married, but I'm
for you. I'll make an exception.
And so, to be honest with you, the really funny thing about you bringing that up right now is I sold my business 3 years ago, and it gave me space in life. It wasn't like I'm, mega, mega rich and I'll never have to work again, but it gave me space. And I spent a lot of that time with psychedelics and with meditation. And all I really want to do now is meditate. And now there's these callings that are coming, which is like, hey, you could do this, and hey, you could help people this way, and everything else. And I realize that path is becoming very similar in my life. I'm not saying, that I'll become a billionaire. Who the hell knows? But I am recognizing those patterns. that, I would rather just go off to the woods, meditate, and enjoy beautiful conversations with friends. And now there's a lot more happening. And I realize that if I'm going to contribute to this world in the way that in my soul that I want to, that I've got to step out into this uncomfortable newness, right? Kind of like Brene Brown of like, being brave is stepping into the uncomfortable. Like, do that and see what happens.
Yeah, one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I was going to say that if you're listening to this and you're kind of like, okay, well, this is interesting. Why are they talking about intention and the universe and stuff? And I think, I was actually going to divert a little bit and say that the reason that because Chris has a mission. It's not just like he's got this interesting background and he's done these adventures and listens to audiobooks while on psilocybin. But can you talk a little bit about your mission, Chris? Because it's kind of big, and it's kind of the thing that when we really, kind of zoned in on it with the story solution thing, it was like, oh, okay, that's a worthy thing. That's something that we can.
Yeah, I absolutely want to go there. But before we leave the surrender experiment real quick, I just want to say that I think the big takeaway from that book, at least for me, was just don't swim upstream. Like, there's no reason to. It's, like there's a certain way that we can go through life. And it's really easy to battle against what's hitting you. And it's so futile. And I think that's the big thing that helped me last year and helped us transition the entire company, was just relaxing into it. Like, we weren't fighting the inevitable stuff that was coming our way. We were rolling into it. And the author of the Surrender Experiment, he keeps saying basically there's all this stuff that he doesn't really want to do, but it hits his... It comes into his sphere, and his basic response to all of it is, I wouldn't be presented with this if I wasn't supposed to be. So I'm going to do these things. I'm going to take these opportunities. And that's pretty much the way we've governed all of our decisions, which sounds a little woo-woo. And it's not. It's not like Johnny and I are like, we.
No, it's like judo or something, where it's like you can be combatant, or you do one of those arts where you're using your opponent's momentum. Not that like life is an opponent or whatever, but that's what it is. It's
because then you're using the actual propulsion of life itself to keep you moving forward, where otherwise you're fighting against it. So it's really easy to stay in one place or even get pulled backwards, where instead, if you're just going with the tide, you're naturally moving forward. It may not be forward in the way that you have diagnosed or prescribed that you're going to go forward, but it's still forward.
Yeah. Along with that, if you don't mind me, like it taught me both that, right? Go with the flow. So basically add your energy to the energy of what's happening for a more profound and deeper effect, right? And then the second part of it is we often get super impatient. At least I know that I do. And I want so this comes to that whole, I don't believe in the secret. I don't believe in just, think it and it's going to come into your life. I think that we are active participants in this world. And so when we think something, we want it to happen like that. But some things just have a cycle in life as well. It takes a certain amount of time for them to happen. You guys, I'm sure that last year you wanted to be able to put out a book every week and to really embrace this new world, but you realized that you had to put in the work, you had to set things up, and that, the flow of how life was going for you meant that it was more than likely going to happen this year instead, but you had to prepare for it, right? So, the other part of that is you can't force things, some things, you can't force them faster than the cycle is going to take them anyways. And so embracing both sides of that. Don't swim upstream, but don't try to swim downstream so fast that you miss everything or that, you slam your head into rocks. I think that's how I would look at both sides of that. It's kind of like that force versus power. It's a very interesting dynamic. You can't force everything.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear about your goal, but I feel, or your mission, but I feel like I want to add something to that, because this is something that I've sort of been contemplating a lot recently, is learning to appreciate where things are now rather than always looking toward a goal, which sounds the opposite of what you would expect for entrepreneur types. Like, entrepreneur types are very much, and I'm very much this type, is, it's always, okay, so I'm doing this and I'm going toward this, and an increased focus on where are we right now, and it's good. Like, it's going the direction I want. I'm not just like sitting back and going, what will happen will happen. It's not that there's action being taken.
Well, you have to do your part for sure.
Yeah, and you have to be able to appreciate where you are now and what's going on right now as a necessary part of the process.
Yeah, I think, and this is a really tough lesson for me, was full acceptance of the situation that you're in and just feeling like that's enough, and yet knowing that naturally you're going to grow, you're going to progress. Like some of us are just wired that way. And so like there is that balance there. It's not as if you accept where you are today, it's not as if you're not going to change and grow and adapt and new and beautiful things won't come into your life. They will. But if you don't have that acceptance, you'll never find some sense of fulfillment. You'll never find a place of actual joy, because you're always waiting for something else new to come into your life, and it's never enough.
You also either completely dilute or eliminate the lessons that you could get from that, or the good. You know, it's like anytime that we're in like not a bad place even, but just like a place of like a frustrating place, because the money isn't there to do the things that we want to do, or, you know, whatever it is. Cindy will always tell me it's temporary. You know, it's temporary. Like that's a recurring mantra for her. It's temporary, because when you realize that it's temporary, then you know that there's another side of it. But even more importantly than there being another side of it, you can say, well, what am I supposed to get out of the thing that I'm in right now? Am I supposed to be learning patience? Am I supposed to be learning humility? Like, what is it?
Yeah. I hope you guys don't mind me. Like, I actually had and this is a super simple, but it was a profound lesson while I was at your, the workshop, the group that you guys pulled together back in February, was it? January, February?
I think it was October of last year.
No. The one.
The summit. Yeah.
So I was sitting in a hotel room. I was meditating after one of the days, actually the beginning of the day after the full event. And it's a weird hotel that we're in, because there's an atrium that allows sun in, and then sun can come into your room. And I was sitting there meditating in the sun. I'm like, oh, this feels good. I love this sun. Then a cloud passed over the sun, and I was like, I don't like that so much. And but then like this immediate thought popped into my head, and this is simple. We all know this, but to kind of like know it deeper was, yeah, the sun's going to come back, dude. Don't worry. And like my whole like worry about I'm in the shade now and it's not as enjoyable just went away. And I knew the sun would come back, because the sun always comes back, right?
The sun will come out tomorrow.
The sun will come out tomorrow, right? And it does. It always comes back. And so that's the whole thing of like accepting this change, and this too shall pass. Was I think it's Marcus Aurelius said that, is knowing that, you know, there's going to be a shift and change, and the good, the joy, all that stuff, like it always comes back into your life at some point. And just believing that allows you to move through and accept where you are, and then embrace when that positive change comes.
So before we pivot, Dave, anything in the comments for the live audience that we need to know about? Anything in particular that people are screaming about? Are they yelling at you for your earlier references? What's going on, Dave?
No, everybody in the comments is enjoying it. Sandra Turnbull said it's all about expectations. Expectations will kiss your kiss your R's every time. Futile and exhausting.
They'll kiss it sometimes.
It does elevate it by being the arse instead of the ass, though. That's yes. Definitely the thing. All right. So all of this that we've been talking about, Chris, how does it work into like your mission? What is your mission? What would you like to affect the world? How would you like to affect the world?
My largest mission, coming from a background in technology and then having like this, I think more grounded humanistic view, is to help humanity transition through this time of change, right? We're going to come into a time when AI and automation and all of these shifts and changes are going to come into our lives, and they're going to profoundly affect what our lives are like. People who have, you know, jobs are going to lose their jobs. People who have meaning in their life and purpose are going to lose that because they won't be able to do it. And I think at the very core of that is mindset of embracing change. But then going even deeper than that, it's we live in this world that right now is profoundly disconnected and alone, and we often feel that way. And I know intensely what that feels like. And so step one for me is to help people feel less disconnected and less alone, because I think that is the hardest place to be in this world. And if we can elevate just a little bit beyond there, then we can all grow into things that are deeper and more profound, and we can embrace these changes that are coming into the world.
Yeah, the core of that for me is the loneliness thing, because I think that we live in a strange, and this isn't a profound thought, everybody's made this, but I think we seldom think about it, is we live in a world that's more connected than ever. Like I could be on a Skype, real-time discussion with the other side of the world and it's no big deal. Like we're here and we're across the globe, but we're talking. And then social media, like everybody's quote unquote connected constantly, but it's such a superficial connection. And I think that it also dampens real connection because we think, well, I got it covered. I have thousands and thousands of Twitter followers and Facebook friends, so therefore I'm connected. But we're starving for that like in-person connection of sitting across from somebody and breaking bread, or touch, or genuine caring, or something like that. And that feeling that whatever I'm going through, it's better if I can just know that somebody else is as well.
And I think that disconnection is also profoundly internal, meaning in my life, I was profoundly disconnected from my emotions, from my body, from, even my own unconscious thoughts. So internally, I had this little brain that was kind of moving around and disconnected from the rest of me. And then externally, I felt as if nobody could understand what I was going through, and I was alone and suffering alone, and I had no real connections to the outside. And I think addressing both of those is it's the goal. It's what we need to do in order to move forward.
So not to get like into Dave's basement and like the true darkness here, but
we did promise more Dave on this one.
we
don't have to do more.
Well, we can. I'm actually curious to see what Dave would.
I want to know if Dave went out to eat recently, but we'll handle that for later.
No. But when we talked about this before, we were talking kind of about a worst case scenario, right? About like where the world is rolling to if we don't start paying attention to this. So not to get super doom and gloom, but like what are the stakes here? If we don't start paying attention to this, what is the crisis point with humans and loneliness and where the world is going?
Dave, do you want to jump in out of curiosity before I do?
They're going to be such different answers.
Well, I think the more disconnected we are, the more isolated we are from one another, and the more easier it is for us to turn on one another and to be used and manipulated against each other. And you see that happening in the political space right now. And I don't know that it's ever been this bad, with just the ability to go from, I don't know, it just feels like we are farther apart than we've ever been, even though we have the ability to be closer than we've ever become.
Yeah, I mean, if I could hop into Dave's basement a little bit on this, I think
don't let them out.
Might not come out alive.
I'm not a big fan of social media. I kind of hate it. Bless you if you love it, but whatever. I don't, and I think I think what it does is
destroy the
world. Yeah. I mean, I think it depersonalizes. So if there's a screen between you and your neighbor on Facebook, and they say something that you don't like, and they're like, they say something, blah blah blah, right wing thought. And then you're like, well, I'm here on my computer and there's a computer between us, blah, 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 left wing thought, and you suck. Like, it's so much easier to be combatant.
And it doesn't take long for Hitler. It's like one of our shows. Hitler shows up way too soon.
Right. And so I think that if you have to look somebody in the eye, if you have to like be near somebody and share their space, there's a closer personal connection and people don't devolve as fast. But I think that there's this mob mentality and this piling on mentality and this anonymity that comes.
In person, when you actually talk to people instead of at them, you see similarities versus differences. But in the world we're in right now, in the way social media is going, you see the differences, and that is cultivated, and that is used against it. It's used to destroy us. Go ahead, Chris.
Dave. No, I think that again, like this profound disconnection is leading towards a space where we are manipulated and polarized away. Instead of realizing how similar we are, we might have some different views, but at the core, humans are deeply the same, right? A way that I experienced this, maybe it's helpful. I grew up as an Army brat. So I remember being stationed with my dad in Germany, and my stepdad was in the military, and we're in Germany. And he used to have this deck of cards. And this deck of cards, you'd open it up, and it was like silhouettes of Russian military vehicles, so that when you saw them on the horizon, you could identify them and know their abilities. And it always had like what they fire, what their range is, what their speed is, etc. And so, and then growing up in, the 80s and 90s, like, Rocky versus the Russians, like it was always us versus them. And I've done a couple of trips through Russia now. One was the ambulance going through, and another one was this motorcycle driving it through Siberia to the Arctic Circle. And both times that I've been through Russia,
well, at least it was warm, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was minus 40 degrees outside. We're camping. It was a bit torturous, but incredible. And in both times I've been through Russia, like the amount of hospitality that I've received is incredible, right? That people would bring us in and they would warm us up and they would want to share everything that's going on. We went to this one family's house because we got invited in, and literally you could tell they had next to nothing. Like the people on the trip had 1,000 times more in resources than they did. And yet that evening, they would not stop going down into their little cellar that was there in the kitchen and going down the stairs and pulling up food to be able to share with us gleefully and joyfully. And every time we tried to stop them, they were like, no, like we want to share this with you. And it showed me in a profound, deep way that governments or cultures are one thing, but people at their core are another, and that people are vastly the same, even though we have, these cultures that tell us that we're very, very different. And I think that's the core of it, realizing that we are the same, realizing that we have purpose, that we care about our loved ones, our family, we care about, having a good, rewarding, fulfilling life. We care about doing well, we care about being recognized. We are profoundly the same as humans. And the more that we're connected with ourselves and with others, the more we can realize that. And it makes it easier to work through these differences rather than us versus them, which never wins.
So what would you say are some of the cornerstones? If the goal is to connect people more and, sort of help the plague of loneliness, what would you consider to be some of the things that you would attack to accomplish that goal or forward it?
I think one of the most profound ones is shame. Right. So shame in my life and shame in others is one of the things that keeps us really, really disconnected. I had a lot of shame over having success in my life and constantly being depressed and suicidal, et cetera. And so I never shared it. What I realized is as I began to share those things.
But because you had that disconnect internally between I have the things that other people don't have and I don't appreciate them.
And because I also wasn't sharing the things that were going on in my life in totality. So people would constantly congratulate me for these things. And then I felt this profound internal dissonance between you're congratulating me, you're telling me you would do anything, quote unquote, to have my life. And yet I am so profoundly sad and depressed that I want to end my life. Right. And as I began to share more and more of what I was going through, both the good and the bad, like my achievements and the utter decimation that I had felt, that shame began to evaporate. What I realized is that when we share, we bring like these things that we find shameful out into the world and we kind of like put them out there, that light, it's as if the light of day kind of like dissolves the shadow of shame. Right. And then we begin to be able to move forward more and more, and we hold ourselves and reserve ourselves and put ourselves, isolate ourselves less. And so I think that attacking shame and doing so in a caring, loving way, like allowing people to share these things that are difficult and painful and be brave in doing that, is one of the cornerstones in moving through that.
All right. So do you think that social media is something that we need to get through the growing pains to get to the good that it can be? Or do you think it's inherently something that's always going to be kind of flawed?
So I believe in subverting like the systems that are out there. Surprise, surprise. And this is where Dave and I will probably get along very, very well. So in my social media feed, let's take Facebook, right? Like many of us, I have a bunch of friends, etc. I consciously sit down every year and I choose 30, 40 people to follow. Right. And I only follow 30 and 40 people. And that choice is made because these are the relationships that I believe are mutually serving and that I want to really grow for the next year. And those are the only people that I follow. I may check in on other people time to time and see what's going on. But I realize that I don't need a flood of information coming into me that distracts me from the core people within my life. And like there are tools and I use them essentially to turn my social media feed into something that is beneficial for me. Now, when something, Sean, you're somebody I follow, it's something that, happens and it's posted. I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm so glad I know that about Sean's life. And it is meaningful and impactful to me. And then I can send a message and go, yo, Sean, that was fucking awesome. I just saw this. I'm so proud of you, yada, yada, yada. Right.
Yeah, that's funny because when we were at in Park City, I was having breakfast, I don't know, one of the mornings, and when I was talking about how much I hate social media and hate Facebook, and pretty much everyone at the table agreed. But they also said, but you have to pay attention to the MMT Facebook page because it's really worth it, and the community's there. And I hadn't been on Facebook probably for anything other than like my mom emails me something and says, "Did you see what I put on Facebook?" And I have to
that alone is worth you being on Facebook. If you aren't on Sean's mom's, if you aren't Sean's mom's friend on Facebook, you're missing out.
Yeah, I saw what your mom put on Facebook.
Okay, so anyway, but yeah, it's the same thing. Like a lot of people will try to communicate with me on Facebook, and like that's just not my place. Like I'm not going to go and log in. I'm not going to go see it, like whatever. But I know like that's a place that you do communicate, and I know that okay, well I'm going to go and I'm going to exchange something with Chris. So it is. I totally agree. There's maybe 10 people that the only way I really communicate with them is in some social space like that. But it's the exception to the rule. And it's just not, I'm never going to be on Facebook just because. I'm going to get a signal and then go there and then, interpret.
So
send up the Sean signal.
Yeah, exactly. Dun, dun, dun. But what you've just said there is also intentionality, which I think is another cornerstone of using social media. So rather than it just becoming the default of how we spend our day and allowing like thoughts of, comparison, like, oh man, this guy's doing this awesome thing. Oh, this guy has this awesome life. I feel shitty. Like instead of allowing that, just to intentionally use it. Like, okay, it's a beautiful place in some cases to communicate and see what's going on in people's lives, and then get the fuck out and live your life. And so I filter it heavily. I'm very intentional about using it. And I'll go, a week at a time, sometimes without checking social media when I feel that it's becoming a habit.
I think that that's a huge, huge thing that I've tried to incorporate into my life is no matter what you're using. So for instance, like social media, I mean, I'm not a fan in general, but I would so not say that it's like a bad thing. It's a thing that can be used in one way or another way. And it just depends how you're using it. And there are tendencies. But I think that using something with intention is doing something with intention, like just about any habit can be good if you're doing it intentionally. If you're doing it knowing what you're getting, it's the know your why. But I think that so many people kind of live on autopilot, and they use social media the way that they use sitting on the couch with a bag of Oreos or something, where it's just kind of like, this is my time candy or something, and I'm treating it as if it's something out there separate from me. These aren't really people. I mean, that's not anything anyone would think, but that's the autopilot. So I think that. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's built to be addictive and reward your behavior of checking and endlessly checking.
Well, I mean, built literally. Like, isn't there the story about the endless scroll?
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, I think for people that are disconnected and lonely, that is so powerful and addictive, and it's hard to break that.
Well,
because it's our only connection.
Yeah, it becomes something more. It becomes narcotic then.
Yeah. So I think this is, for me, is why one of the deepest tools and a personal level is mindfulness. And I don't mean this even on a spiritual level or anything else. It's just, that time, whether you're walking and you're in touch with your thoughts or you're meditating or whatever else, you become aware of what you're doing. And then if you ask questions, you become aware of why you're doing it. Right. And that allows you to be intentional rather than just being manipulated and going with the flow and continue on Facebook for, 3 hours before you look up.
Yeah, I think that the big thing there is to be really aware of what you're feeling and why. Because I think right now we're not real comfortable being bored. We're not real comfortable saying like, oh,
being uncomfortable or silence or something feels bad.
So like one thing that really helped me is like I used to, anybody who's listened to this for 5 years, I've been walking every day, right? I walk a lot. But I always felt like, man, I'm walking. I need to be dictating, or I need to be having a call, or I need to be listening to an audiobook. I need to be like filling myself with something. And one of the things that really helped get me out of that is I got a dog. And when I walk with the dog, sometimes I just want to walk with the dog. Like, I don't want to be worrying about dictating or hearing something. I want to be present with him. And then I realized, well, that's kind of cool just to like take a walk with nothing other than like thinking about either the day I've had so far or the rest of the day I'm going to have, and that you don't have to fill every single moment. I very actively do not, I don't travel with my phone unless I need it. And even when I'm driving, I put it in the back seat before I start the car, because I don't want to be tempted. I don't want to have to need it. I don't want it to be like a twitch. So I think that if we can be more aware of how we're feeling in any given moment, and we don't, surrender to that urge. I mean, this is the kind of bad surrender, I think. This is the kind of surrender that's giving up, not surrendering so you're not going against the stream, but the idea that, oh yeah, I'm going to pick that up because I feel a moment of discomfort that I might be bored.
Yeah, and so I think the core of that is to live consciously instead of unconsciously, because that unconscious
Absolutely.
surrender that you're talking about, right, which can allow us to be manipulated both by political parties or by tech companies or by just general advertising. Like, why is it that I loved Coke for so long, right? Like, and not that Coke, but I do have a question for you, Sean, and I don't know if this is a bit of a turn, but it came to mind as you were sharing that. I found in my life that if I'm consuming a lot, it's hard for me to create. When I get into like a creator mode, I want to consume less. And because you're such a profound creator and you write so much and everything else, prolific, that's probably the word that I'm looking for. Did you find that cycle changed in your life, or has that becoming less attached to like, the media and your phone and everything else? Has that allowed you to create more or better? How has that worked?
Yeah, I think that for sure. I actually like to consume as much as I possibly can. I just love stories. So if I have more time to watch good TV, not junk TV, but like actually curated, this is what I am planning to watch. I think the worst thing is not that you can't ever do it. Sometimes vegging out on the couch and channel surfing is fine. It's fun, but it is an acidic activity compared to deciding these are the 3 things I want to watch, and I'm watching them with purpose. So a lot of times I am watching something with purpose. And I think that the more that I see how other people look at the world and articulate the world and try to nudge the world through their stories, the more inspired or driven I am to tell my own versions of those stories. And I'm also surrounded by amazing storytellers who want to tell their stories too. So, every time Bonnie wants to tell a story, or Dave or Johnny, like, I'm excited to tell those stories. So no, I don't think that the amount that I consume, I'm always going to want to consume and create the most I possibly can. And those are kind of my 2 favorite things in the world, is consuming story and creating story. So I really see it as a balance. And it's not because I'm creating more and consuming less. It may be I have so much to create at any given time that I have to consume less. But Johnny and I have talked about this a lot, actually, that we want to get our schedules to a place where consumption is a part of our workday. So, it's like maybe there's a 2-hour block every day and I just go watch TV, because right now I only do it before I'm going to sleep, really, where, I'm kind of empty. So it's going into like a more vacant receptacle than if I were to watch the same stories at lunchtime.
Well, if you're consuming.
If you're doing it then, sorry, but also that's a time for kind of like priming the unconscious before you sleep as well, right? Think about like
Yes.
processing and integrating and incorporating that. Huh. Okay. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. If you're consuming good stories, then I think it inspires you to want to write great stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so I'm noticing we're kind of hitting a lull at the hour point anyway, but should I read the Urban Dictionary definition of Sean's mom? Which
you can definitely do that, but just wait a second.
Are you sure? Because it might be as profound as what you're about to say.
Go ahead. Well, we didn't even get to really talk about some of the journeying that Chris has done mentally and emotionally, and I think that's fascinating stuff. So I think we all had a good enough time. Chris, do you want to come back and talk about the kind of other side at some point? Because I think that's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love the hell out of the 2 of you guys. I mean, a chance to sit down and just have a conversation with you, I'd do anytime. So
wait, just the 2 of them?
Yeah,
Fuck you, Chris. You're dead to me.
I know exactly how to feed into your insecurities.
That was awesome. Okay, so yes, let's do that. Dave just went dark.
Oh damn!
I hate you all.
I will say this in complete truth. I didn't know Dave very well, and I got to know Sean and Johnny more. But at the summit, with everything, Dave, that you shared and opened up about, like, man, I like sat there and began like just weeping a little bit with you sharing your story and being so open. So we don't know each other incredibly well, but I have a.
That's because he stood you up for dinner. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, you were supposed to sit next to me. That's
right.
what it is.
That's right.
Oh, was I? Oh, okay.
Yes, but I don't know what the reason was. It was
because he didn't like the parking lot.
No,
Oh, I couldn't find a parking spot.
He was
the universe,
driving over
the
from the
universe
Renaissance.
did not want me to go there.
He was
all right?
driving from the Renaissance to Zitejas, which is about 6 steps.
yeah, it's a
And he was like, this parking lot I can't find anywhere. Fuck
And
this place.
they also had complimentary valet, which was my favorite thing about it. Completely. If he had like just looked for 1 minute, he would have driven right up and seen the complimentary.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
So anyway, yeah, I think that's that. I think you have some profound things to say there, and you know, Johnny and I are very, very curious. Always, I just finished How to Change Your Mind, and Johnny's reading How to Change Your Mind right now. So I think those will be really fun discussions, and we should definitely circle back.
Similar to Stacy's mom, except Sean's mom definitely does not have it going on. From Urban Dictionary. Here's some example uses. Hey, Sean, can you bring some towels? Things got a little messy on your mom. Did you see Sean's mom last night? Yeah, I was coming out when you were heading in. I heard Sean's mom send out a mass text to her male friends in the network crashed. So it's not a good soup. Don't send her to Urban Dictionary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And on that note,
I just, there's really no way to, but
so
anyways,
where can people find Chris?
Right here. I mean, aren't you present? I don't understand the question.
Is there anything you want to rally people around or send people to or anything like that?
I haven't been very prolific on social media or anything else recently, and I'm not going to be for the next couple of months as I sit down to do a lot of writing. But if you want to connect with me, I guess the best place is Twitter, at Chris Plough. You can connect with me there.
Say that name again.
Mr. Plough?
Mr. Plough.
That's his name. That name again is Mr. Plough.
I think that is Linda Ronstadt.
Is that your porn name?
It's my porn name. It's my real name. It's a Kama Sutra position, and it's the one that your mom screams out.
Wow. My mom's dead. Thank you.
So is mine. Don't try to play that game with me.
Okay, so Plough is Plough, and he does have the jacket, and he wears it in bed. So there you go. All right, so thank you so much for being on, Chris. This was a fun return to number 1 guests and number 2 live shows. So
yeah, what a great first guest. Seriously, that was rad.
Thank you, guys.
So we'll just stop the recording here. So thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next.
Just don't forget that he loves 2 of us.
Right,
only 2 of us. Yeah, live. We'll be live Fridays. Sterling.
Oh,
and
I can't wait till we have our next meeting with Chris. I will be sitting next to you.
/SSP.
Adios.
All right. Thanks.